So today's lesson is called The State of an Open Mind. We're now in May. So do you have the annual theme down yet? Engaging, embracing, and embodying the divine. Engaging, embracing, embodying the divine. As many of you know, if you're following us along with the bookmark, we just got through reading this book called The Art of Contemplation. It was a skinny book. I panicked a little bit when I was on vacation and this book came in and they said, "Kathy, do you know it's over 500 pages?" No, I didn't know that. Although I do have to say, it's very spacious, a lot of space between the lines and between the paragraphs. So it's got a lot of good things to say. So I'll be talking a little bit about both of those books today. And of course, the book is available in our bookstore after today. So let's just take a moment together and breathe in that breath of life. That is your being. Your being present. Say silently to yourself, "I open my mind to the infinite. I soften the edges of certainty. I become available to the truth." And one more breath in together. And let go. That is a sacred moment. Today we explore the state of an open mind, but I have to say while I was doing the lesson, I thought to myself, how about the state of just being open? Because the minute we start talking about the mind, we start heading back into the mind chatter. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But the state of an open mind is a space where you let go of judgment. Curiosity is born. And the divine can whisper through your awareness. There's many doorways through which to pass to reach the depths of your own consciousness. In one way or another, all those open doors provide some form of open contemplation. And that contemplation doesn't stand on its own, but it's key to your consciousness work. When the purpose of your contemplation is to discover your true nature, you can't find your being directly. It is. The most genuine experience of you is not knowing who you are, but allowing yourself to be in the experience of being. Now, of course, our mind, whether it's here we practice as many spiritual practices, one of them being meditation. What does your mind do when you try to silence it? It gets noisy. And our job is just to listen to that and then to remind ourselves that we're focusing on our breath or focusing on being present. But we so quickly want to jump in. And in many cases, when we're watching or experiencing something, jump to conclusions. So let me start with, why would an open mind be important? And there's a hint here. Think about children. Why would it be important to have an open mind? To learn. No limitations. Experience. Experience what is now. Respect. Okay. No judgment. And when you have no judgment, what would be the opposite of that? Accepting, and I say accepting loosely, accepting what is rather than what you already think you might have defined in your mind. Can you have creativity with an open mind? Matter of fact, with a closed mind, it's a lot harder to be creative. So critical judgments tend to shut us down and shuts down connections with others and with nature. Oh yeah, I've seen that before. Oh yeah, I know that. Deep listening and compassionate inquiry allows the still small voice to speak within us. However, an open mind is not a passive mind. An open mind is actually aware. Loving is the word that I was looking for not judging. Loving what is. And deeply alive in the moment. So an open mind is aware, loving, and deeply alive. On page 37, many of you will know why I love this story. It's a story about a university professor and a Zen master. A university professor went to a master to inquire about Zen. The master served the tea. He poured the professor's cup full and then kept on pouring. The professor watched and then finally exclaimed, "When are you going to stop? The cup is full." "Like this cup," the Zen master said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" So we have an ego, and that's a good thing. It keeps us alive. But there's also parts of the ego that, again, cause shutdown. We identify ourselves and our beliefs and our opinions. I already know that. I've already been there. I've already experienced that. Ego loves identity, and that may be for many reasons. That could be because it feels safer to know who we are, to know who others are, to know where we're going, what we're doing. I want to do an experiment with you, and I want you to, feel free to move your head 360 degrees, your body, and find all the things in the room that are blue. Okay, just spend a minute finding all the things in the room that are blue. Okay, you got some things pointed out? Now tell me what's red in the room. And that's only because you're sitting in front of them. In other words, when I asked you to focus on blue, what happened? You see blue. Ever buy a car and then realize after you bought the car how many people have your car? So, that is not necessarily an open mind because we are taking in what we are focused on and expecting. So an open mind actually allows us to become more aware of what is present right now. Inquiry and curiosity. What can I see? What can I see? So let me ask in general in society, what do they feel about not knowing? In other words, our society is built a lot around, let me tell you what I know. Not knowing is really uncomfortable for us. The author of the book of not knowing, says, we have an ineffective relationship with not knowing. Yesterday, we had a family member. Of course, I'm doing the lesson, preparing the lesson. So what am I going to see? Examples of knowing and how we can be in not knowing and be okay with not knowing. And so it just so happens that I'll say a middle-aged family member says, I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know there was one full moon a month, and that when there's two moons in a full month, it's called the blue moon. I am embarrassed by. Why? Why are you embarrassed by? But society tends to be that there are things that you should know. And if you don't know, let me tell you. It's important for you to know that before you know anything, there is a state of not knowing, or you won't learn. So if you think you already know it, you're not going to learn. So an open mind is really the mother of openness, questioning, authenticity, and frankly, could free us from what we have structured in here. So why do you think it's so hard to have an open mind? Why do we, as a society, walk around feeling like I have to identify or know? Say that? Everyone else is, So we are in a race consciousness. It's like, well, this is how everybody else functions, so unless I question it, unless I become open to questioning it, we're conditioned, if we allow ourselves to. So we need to be self-leaders in looking at the current situation and then asking ourselves, is that what I believe? Is that what I see and experience directly? Peter Ralston talks about the ego depends on knowing who we are and then defending it. I don't need to say the word politics, because that's what we're doing, right? Certainty becomes armor. Being right becomes a survival tool. Because if we're not right, then we may get embarrassed. Or worse, agreed. When we live from the place of feeling like we already know, we react, we defend, we categorize, and we close down. In The Art of Contemplation, the other book we just got through reading, we have grown used to giving our power away to thinking. A closed mind thinks it already knows. But knowing isn't always wisdom. It's often a disguise for fear. And from Science of Mind, our textbook, we must be receptive if we would be responsive to the divine. So if everything's already formulaic, I like to think about that as being robotic. Already known, already defined. But that's not the juice of life, is it? So where in your life are you holding on tightly to being right or I know? What would it feel like to let that go? We learned in The Art of Contemplation that contemplation is not about answering questions, but we're so used to problem solving that we don't stay in the question very long. Richard Rudd likes to say that contemplation is about falling in love with the space in between the questions. Are you engaging in life as a mystery or worried about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? It's a different perception depending on what you're looking for. Am I just looking to love this sacred moment? Or am I looking to get to the next thing? What part of the divine is trying to reveal itself in each moment through you? So the characteristics of an open mind would be curious, receptive. I like that word better than accepting. Receptive. Has humility, a comfort with not knowing and the courage to admit it. Has compassion, a softening towards others' perspectives. The characteristic of an open mind is about presence, a non-reactive awareness to just what is, without the labeling. Flexibility, the ability to shift, evolve, and grow. And wonder like a little child, looking at everything with awe. I like what Don Primer says. You can either look at it as a miracle or as ordinary. So all these qualities make for a space for the divine. They help us not to just hear with the ears, but with our hearts. So an open mind I sort of see as a pathway to clearly getting to the heart. Because when we don't have an open mind, it stops here and never reaches the heart. So we move from reaction to reflection, from judgment to curiosity, and from ego to essence. Dr. Ernest Holmes says, we are thinking centers, but in a universal mind. There are unlimited possibilities. What do we tend to do with a closed mind? Here's how I see it. We can only think creatively when the mind is more open and free. And I'm sure you've all heard the saying that says, your mind functions like a parachute. It works better when it's open. We can connect more deeply with others if we stop projecting onto them what we expect, what we think we know about them. I was going to say earlier, when I was a little kid, I constantly had people ask me, are you a boy or a girl? And I was like, why does it matter? With an open mind, we can have access to a greater peace because we're not resisting what is. Loved Facebook's comic of Jesus standing in front of a crowd saying, it's simple, just love, which was our theme a couple years ago, just love. You know what the next frame had? But do I have to love that one? You mean that one over there? But that one's not like me, but that... We resist just love because we have this mind going off, categorizing, labeling. The ego wants to identify. We can awaken to our authentic truth, not just by conditioning. But we have to be willing, I'll say, really to take the time and to learn this new habit of constantly being open. What could unfold if you gave up the need to be right? What becomes possible when you greet life with openness? How do you feel when you don't know something? The truth is that we really don't know what's going to happen next, ever. But we fill it in with what we think will happen next which then means we're not being present with what is. So what kind of daily spiritual practices could be used? Again, the books are helping to lead us to contemplation, radical inquiry, asking more questions rather than thinking you have the answers. Sacred, or what I call deep listening, hearing what others have to say without feeling like you have to prepare for a response. Oh, you know that, and I know this, and then you know that. But just listening, being open, being present. And of course, we recommend meditation, which is a practice and does require patience of accepting what is going on through your mind. Because an open mind is not an empty mind, it is a mind filled with potential, with presence, with possibility. When we engage, embrace, and embody the divine, we move from living in reaction and already knowing into living in the revelation of the here and now. So I have an affirmation for all of us. Say with me, I am not bound, by what I think I know. I am open to divine wisdom. I walk in curiosity. Live in compassion. And awaken to spiritual truth. Namaste.